The thing about China that is, for many of us, so captivating is that in some ways it's a lot like the United States in that it imagines itself as a singular civilization, a place that is unlike any other. And there are great powers in the world, there are many of them, but there are very few that have ever imagined themselves as being the dominant power in human history, and that, after all, is the way China sees itself. I think sometimes when we look at China from far away, we see most easily the stories about people who are successes, the people on the winning side of the equation. But actually the dominant experience, and the thing that really became the center of this project, was about the sense of anxiety and unease about whether or not you can make it. Because in China today, the gap between rich and poor is larger than it's ever been. It's as large as it is in the West. And in the People's Republic, that creates a very specific kind of political energy. And I think we need to be aware of it and thinking about it as we try to understand what the future holds for China. Yeah, the Chinese government today talks about the Chinese dream. And what it means by that is the renewal of the nation. And they talk about it all the time. It's on the front page of the newspaper. But what I think is interesting is asking whether or not the Chinese people have the same dream. And what you find when you burrow into people's lives is, in fact, they have these very idiosyncratic, very personal conceptions of what it is they want out of life. And that's a collision between what the state offers them as the object of aspiration and, in fact, what they want for themselves. I think the thing about China, and particularly this period there, that really spoke to me was that people's biographies were compressed into this narrow span of time. People would have these incredible transformations in their lives. They would grow up quite literally in a village in which farmers couldn't read or write. And in the span of 5, 6, or 8 years that I was there, for instance, people started businesses. They all of a sudden became plutocrats, and I found that sort of fascinating. And in other cases, people would run up against the limits of what was possible, and that was equally interesting. China has created the world's largest effort to censor human expression, and yet at the same time, you have people there who are now growing up in an environment over the last 25 or 30 years in which they have control over their personal lives in ways they never had before, over where they work, where they live, who they marry. And so all of a sudden they find that they can't have control over what they know. And that creates, it's sort of baffling for them. And so people are starting to run up against the edges of what the censorship system will allow. What the World Affairs Council does, which is extraordinary, is that it allows people to understand what it feels like to be on the opposite side of the planet these days. And I'm struck by this moment in which, in fact, our lives on US soil and on Chinese soil are becoming more similar, and yet we also find that our governments are moving into more contradiction with each other. And I'm trying to help people in the US understand what it feels like to be in China. And perhaps that can, I think, help us understand some of the choices that they make in the years ahead. In a way, this is an amazing moment to be interested in the world because of technology and because of transportation. You can now go to places you simply couldn't go before. And that's thrilling. I mean, this is an amazing time to be learning about the rest of the world. And in a sense, we have no excuse not to.